Cyanco is a leading supplier of sodium cyanide and applied technologies to the gold mining industry throughout the world. We operate 3 manufacturing plants in the United States. 2 plants in Winnemucca, Nevada, which produce liquid sodium cyanide, and 1 plant near Houston, Texas, which produces solid sodium cyanide. We also operate liquid transloading terminals in Cadillac, Quebec, Canada, and Cheyenne, Wyoming, and a liquid and solid sodium cyanide distribution center in Hermosillo, Sonora, Mexico. Cyanco is a member of the International Cyanide Management Institute, which is a nonprofit organization established to administer the International Cyanide Management Code for the safe manufacture, transport, and use of cyanide in the production of gold and silver. The Cyanide Code was originally developed for gold mining operations and addresses production, transport, storage, and use of cyanide and the decommissioning of cyanide facilities. The code also includes requirements related to accident prevention, emergency response, training, and more. All of Cyanco's operational facilities and supply chains are certified under the International Cyanide Management Code. We ship our products to various mine sites located in North America, Central America, South America, Africa, and Russia. Cyanide occurs naturally in our environment and can be found in apple seeds, lima beans, and almonds. Cyanide's special properties are significant for an extensive list of products and processes. It is a principal chemical building block in the manufacture of some insecticides, commercial dyes, animal feed additives, and pharmaceuticals. It is also used in electroplating and in mining for the extraction of gold and silver. Cyanco produces and ships sodium cyanide as both a solid and a liquid, depending on the customer's specifications. Solid sodium cyanide is shipped as briquettes, typically at 98% concentration. These are similar in size to charcoal briquettes used in barbecue grills. Liquid sodium cyanide is shipped at approximately 30% concentration, with the remaining 70% as water. Solid sodium cyanide briquettes are white in color and quite soluble in water. They are odorless and stable when dry, but will emit a faint odor of bitter almonds and/or ammonia when exposed to moisture. However, nearly half of the people who encounter it may be unable to detect the odor, and some people who handle it regularly may become desensitized to the smell, making it all the more difficult to identify. Sodium cyanide itself, in either solid or liquid form, is not combustible. But if exposed to water, acids, or even moist air, solid sodium cyanide will release toxic and flammable hydrogen cyanide. In its liquid form, sodium cyanide is colorless to yellowish in color and may also give off a faint odor of bitter almonds and/or ammonia. Because both solid and liquid sodium cyanide have a normal pH above 11.5, it is highly corrosive in nature. Both solid and liquid sodium cyanide are pH stabilized with sodium hydroxide, caustic soda, to suppress the formation of hydrogen cyanide. Contact with the eyes can cause immediate, often irreversible damage. Sodium cyanide can be fatal if absorbed through the skin, inhaled, or ingested. Sodium cyanide, whether in solid or liquid form, is stable at room temperature if its pH is above 11.5. At a lower pH, the sodium cyanide will begin to release hydrogen cyanide. At a pH of 9.5, about 50% of the cyanide content in the product is converted to hydrogen cyanide. And at a pH of 7, almost 100% of the cyanide content is converted to hydrogen cyanide. Sodium cyanide is not considered carcinogenic. However, it is very toxic to fish and marine life and may cause long-term adverse effects in the aquatic environment. Sodium cyanide is highly corrosive to aluminum, copper, and brass, and therefore these metals should not be used in sodium cyanide service. Whether the sodium cyanide is in liquid or solid form, it is highly reactive with strong acids and oxidizers. Therefore, it should never come in contact with these substances. The United States Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, permissible exposure limit, PEL, for sodium cyanide is 5 milligrams per cubic meter of air over an 8-hour period. For hydrogen cyanide, which can be produced from sodium cyanide under emergency conditions, the OSHA PEL is 10 parts per million. The United States Mine Safety and Health Administration, MSHA, short-term exposure limit, STEL, for hydrogen cyanide is 4.7 parts per million, as established by the American Conference of Governmental Industrial Hygienists, ACGIH. Exposure to hydrogen cyanide over 10 parts per million could produce symptoms of cyanide poisoning, and at 50 parts per million, the effects of cyanide exposure are considered immediately dangerous to life and health. At concentrations of 270 parts per million or greater, hydrogen cyanide can be fatal within minutes. The health effects of sodium cyanide exposure will vary with the amount and time of exposure. But regardless of the concentration, the toxicity of sodium cyanide cannot be understated. It is extremely poisonous and requires immediate first aid for overexposure. It is so toxic that ingesting an amount about the size of a grain of rice could cause an immediate collapse, and if left untreated, can be fatal. While an exposure of this kind may be highly unusual, it is important to understand the lethal potential of sodium cyanide and to always approach its handling and use with safety in mind. Any overexposure to sodium cyanide must be considered serious and treated immediately. Even with the use of proper personal protective equipment, personal hygiene is important. Wash your hands and face thoroughly after working around sodium cyanide, especially before eating, drinking, or smoking. Never eat, drink, or smoke in an area where sodium cyanide is present. Let's summarize. Sodium cyanide is shipped in both solid and liquid form. It is highly toxic and corrosive and must be handled with extreme attention to safety. It is stable at a pH of 11.5 or higher, but will start to release toxic hydrogen cyanide when the pH goes below 11.5, so always use proper PPE and good personal hygiene when working around sodium cyanide. If you have further questions, please contact the Cyanco technical representative at the email address on your screen. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.